Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Faithful Five podcast. We are honored today to have Eustace Mita here with us. Eustace is the CEO, I guess is your title, of Icona Resorts. Am I correct on that one?
That is correct, Chairman and CEO, but it's only two C's, Tom.
All right, I like that. Two C's. Eustace, let's get started. Give me just a quick 60-second summary on family life and what you're doing with yourself.
Great. Thanks, Tom, and I appreciate your time as well. So Sue and I, my wife, I started dating her. I'm doing this 60 seconds too, Tom. I started dating her. I saw her at the Villa Maria prom, even though I wasn't with her. And I said, that is the girl that I'm going to marry. And so I started dating her after her prom. And that was oh God, I can't believe I'm saying this. That was 50 years ago. We've been married for 47 years, 5 children, 17 grandchildren.
Wow, that's awesome. We could have a podcast just on that prom meeting, I'm sure, but we don't have time for that.
Yes, we could. Even that would take 15 minutes, just that one.
Exactly. All right, well, let's jump in. Talk a little bit about your faith journey. At what point in your life did faith start to play a little bit more of a role, and did something trigger it, or did it just kind of happen organically?
You know, it's interesting, Tom, and you knew my mother, and my mother and my grandmother were very faith-filled, and my mother worked, and that really, in our generation, that was very rare. But she worked 5 days a week, and yet always had time to pray. Always, if we complained about anything, she'd say, "Give it up for the souls in purgatory." And I think really along the way, that was a great dose of. Back then you went to mass, it wasn't even a question. You went to mass as a family, everybody dressed up, and so I never really, even when I went to college and high school, I never lost my faith. I really felt that I had some kind of special relationship with the Blessed Mother for as long as I can remember. But I wouldn't say I went deep and hard and devout until I started my own business. And then I always set goals every December: financial goals, relationship goals, spiritual goals, and physical goals. And after the first 7 years, 1 year I'd say I want to go to mass twice a week. Then the next year, 3. So I got up to 7 days, and I said, all right, I'm going to say the rosary once a day or once a week. And then once we had 5 children, I thought, you know what, men, our natural instinct is not to be totally disciplined, but I found we'll do more, at least in my, and everybody I know, your case, my case, we'll do more for our children than we'll ever do for ourselves. So each day is dedicated to our child, one of our children, and it starts with the oldest and goes to the youngest. Euse is the oldest, so he, Julie, and their kids, mass, rosary, and adoration for them on Monday, and then it ends on Friday with Molly, Matt, and their 2 girls, and then Saturday I give this Sue. So there you go. It covers the whole week. So I can't miss it, because if I did, then I let down one of my children. Makes it easier.
I love
But
that.
yeah, and I would say, as far as like really going deep, when the Legionnaires of Christ came into my life 21 years ago, Father John Connor, I met him when he was a deacon, and he said to me, and by the way, I was already going to mass every day, and he said to me, "Hey, who's your spiritual director?" I said, "What's the spiritual director?" "No, I'm a cradle Catholic. I never heard of that." And he told me, he said, "Well, I'll be your spiritual director." And I said, "Well, I'm not really looking for a spiritual director." But the rest is history. He challenged me to start an apostolate, which became the Gospel Reflection Group, which is where Man Up Philly, Man Up New Jersey, Man Up New York emanated from. So I've been very blessed that way, Tom. And when things got tough, 2 children with cancer, almost lost 80% of the business, and the Armageddon of 2008. So I always had that home base, that touchstone. I just take it to the foot of the cross, mostly in adoration, when things got tough.
It's a great. I have so many questions, I can't ask them all, but you touched on it, and you touched on it with 2008. You said when you started to run your own business is where you really dug a little deeper. What was the foundation that allowed you to survive that 2008 crash? And I'm sure plenty of ups and downs, when you started to run your own business.
Well, it's interesting because, we started Mita Leasing in 1984, which is still going today, under the auspices of Bill Gleason. But 2008, by then, I was, for the first 20 years of my business life, I was 90% automotive, 10% real estate. In 2002, I went 90% real estate, 10% automotive. So 2008 was bad for the whole world, but it was worse for real estate than any business. In fact, Tom, worse than the depression if you were in real estate. So I just, I was like, hey, listen, what are you going to do? We build second homes. Well, when Armageddon hits, everybody needs or wants a home. And most people would like a second home down the shore, but nobody needs a second home. So we were like Job for 7 years, people just stopped buying. So I just, I was going to mass and saying the rosary every day, as I said, for the children. But then I started going to adoration every day. And sometimes, Tom, I'd be talking to our Lord about, hey, what do I do here? What do I do there? And sometimes I'd fall asleep. And I used to get embarrassed about it, but I was the only one in adoration the time in the morning I went anyway. And then I would wake up after 15 or 20 minutes. And for the next 20 minutes, I felt so relaxed, not a care in the world. So sometimes I said, Lord, just, hold me. And I'd say to Our Lady, Mom, just put your veil around me, will you? And so I think that's what happened. I mean, I really, I felt such a peace. So I never felt defeated. I was down, but not out. And then I'd look at the Stations of the Cross and I'd say, wow, our Lord fell 3 times. What did he do? Got up. What did he do the second time? Got up. What did he do the third time? Got up. So what kind of piker would I be if I gave up?
Yeah.
Really,
that's awesome. And there's nothing scientific there. You surrendered and gave the Lord some quiet time, and both he and Our Lady rewarded you in some capacity, even if it was just peace of mind, right? So
exactly.
Okay. Next up, who would you say, you touched on your mom earlier, would be the most influential person in your life, is, and maybe guided towards kind of a faith perspective there?
Okay, well, that's a good question, Tom. I wouldn't say any one person. I would say, if you're talking about religious, let's talk religious first. I would say that when I was growing up, we had good pastors at St. Matthias. I think the Christian brothers at Carroll were a very, very good influence on me. And from a lay perspective, I'd probably say we were together a couple of decades. Other than my mother, I would say my uncle, Eustace Wolfington. He was a daily communicant, so we were together for many years. And he and I was just, we would go to mass together. And it was a great bonding and a great, great experience that way. So I would say he had, from a lay standpoint, he had a very strong influence on me.
Okay, great. What do you think is the biggest obstacle? I guess it's a 2-part question, for men to practice their faith, and why is it such a struggle for us? I mean, a lot of times in your reflection group or other reflection groups, I know we talk, men are sometimes surprised that we all struggle with the same, ego, pride, you name it, and, certain sins, but we're all cut from the same cloth. So what do you think is the biggest challenge to preventing men to kind of surrender, like you talked about a little earlier?
You know what I think the biggest challenge is right now? I think it's social media. I think it's the iPhone, the iPad. I know even myself in 2007, when the iPhone came out, I said, this is the greatest tool ever for mankind, because all you need in business, then all you need is a car and an iPhone. Susie, my wife, at the same time said, this is going to be the degradation of the world. I'm actually leaning more towards her, except for one thing, Tom. It's like anything else. If you can use tools and gifts for good, or you can use tools and gifts for bad. Last night we had our first what is going to become a weekly family rosary, and I was so excited. We had like 10 of our 17 grandchildren on there, and to see their little faces in Zoom and give them each a decade. So I think that's a good thing. So here's what an impediment is. As men, we're hunters. That's the way it's in our DNA. So we're out there busy, 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 doing it, doing it, doing it. So it hit me, Tom, what really, turned the lights on for me and changed my life. I always say there's three things that will change you from who you are today to who you are tomorrow. The books you read, the people you meet, the goals you set and achieve. Just like, the nuns used to tell me in sixth grade, I ran with a little rough crowd. They said, Mr. Mita, show me your friends and I'll tell you what you're like. And now I look at somebody like you, Tom, who's had such an influence on your friends and, an influence on me. And I see how faithful you are. And I think, so when I look at goals and I look at books, I think here's the impediment. We're all so busy doing it, doing it, doing it. We're raising our children. But I break it down like this. If you want to be wealthy, you got to have a wealth plan. If you want to be healthy, you got to have a health plan. If you want to get close to God, you got to have a get close to God plan. And that can only be spelled Time. Zig Ziglar always said, not John Ziegler, this is Zig, distant cousin. And Zig said, Love is spelled Time. That's true with our spouses. That's true with our children. And that's true with our God. The more time I spend with Susie, the closer we get. The more time we spend with kids, the closer our kids, the closer you get. And the more time you spend with God, the closer you get. And I know that, you're doing it now, Tom. You mentioned That Man Is You. What a phenomenal program. When I'm in town, which is 90% of the time, we have it every Thursday at St. Mary's. Listen, I'm a busy guy. I don't have the time, but you make the time. I love That Man Is You. And then Friday is our gospel reflection group. So there's two out of 7 days there where you have the camaraderie of men and we're all moving in the same direction. And I say, and you are part of this, Tom, we're all part of the rescue mission. Because when it's all said and done, that's all our Lord's going to ask. Did you bring your family to me? Did you bring you to me? Well, how are you going to bring your family to me if you don't bring you to me? So I thought to myself, well, I better get me to God. How am I going to do it? Spend time with him. And I remember too, Tom, I remember reading even all my life when St. Paul would say, pray unceasingly. And I'm thinking to myself, how would that be possible? Well, what I found is if you spend enough time with God, you find that he's in every thought, word, and deed, literally. You get up in the morning, you say, what are we doing, Lord? I stand at the ready. Hopefully, you can start out with the whole Eucharist, which is like rocket fuel. And then you go about your day. And are you kind? And are you honest and straightforward in all your business dealings? Are you gentle? And I think that that gets down to what we just said. If you want to get close to God, you have to have a get close to God plan. So that's been part of my plan, and I've just been blessed to keep working it. I used to think you can't get any closer to God. If you say go to mass every day, say the rosary every day, adoration, I guess we'll have to die. Well, that's a story for another time. But I realize as long as we're here on earth, we can keep getting closer and closer and closer. Maybe it's 1% this year, 2% next year. So that's it. For me, I just had to have a get close to God plan. I still do, and I re-up it and I tune it up every year.
Yeah, and you re-up it when you could be, like we talked about, or you had mentioned, you could be enjoying your retirement years, but you're loading up on the Lord and giving back where He wants you to. He's driving where He wants you to spend time in the vineyard a lot of times.
Well, as you probably know, Tom, you're so right. And I know we're running out of time, so I would end it on this unless you have another question. This Sunday gospel coming up is about the talents. Last Sunday's was about the bridesmaids with the lamp and the oil running out. So it took me years. I finally realized I used to read the parable of the talents and I got upset. I'm like, wow, I've lost a lot of money in my businesses over the years. All this guy did was bury the one talent. He didn't lose any principal. So it took me till I was 50 years old to realize, no, the talents that God's talking about is I gave Tom certain talents. I gave you certain talents. I gave everybody certain talents, and I want to use them to the best of their ability to bring themselves and people closer to me and use the gifts that they have to bring people closer. So in our hotels now, we say hospitality is a ministry to us, and it is. Well, part of that ministry is we have the Blessed Mother statue in every one of the hotels inside and now outside. And so that's another way for us to, in a very subtle way, hopefully some people say, wow, what's going on here? And so I think that's really it.
We appreciate you taking the time, and very grateful for you to join us today.
Tom, it was my pleasure, and keep up the fight for the Lord. And thank you for being part of his rescue mission, brother.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
All the best. Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye now.